Hey, my name's Jared, and today we are going to be talking about what about Bob, counseling, and the stigma around it. This is Pastors on Pop.
Well, welcome to the show today, Jared.
Thanks, Matt. It's so good for you to have me.
The chairs are reversed.
Uh-huh.
It is
We should have
today.
switched seats.
We should have. That would have been fantastic. Today we're talking about counseling. And if you are into movies, like one of the best counseling comedies ever is What About Bob?
Yeah.
So it came out in 1991.
Yep.
So how old were you when that came out?
7, 8?
7, 8? Yeah, so I was 11.
Is that right? I was born in 84.
Okay.
6, 7, 8.
There you go, yes. And when was the first time you watched it? I actually saw it in the theaters.
Okay.
But when did you?
The first time I watched it was actually in college for my Psych 101 class.
Okay.
Lois Kendall had us watch it at like the very beginning of the semester to kick us off. It was like a really fun psychology kick to learn what not to do.
What
maybe,
not to do in those
I
spaces.
don't know,
Yeah. Yeah. And for those who are listening who maybe are not who don't know What About Bob, we had to actually explain it to our Gen Z producer in the other room.
Although he did admit that once we started talking about it, he was like, Aiden, I know that you're listening to this right now, and the way that he pulls out directors for these movies, like
it was Frank Oz, right?
yeah,
Yes,
and
yes, it was.
You said yes, it was. Were you looking at it, or did you just know?
I knew because I had done some research for the show since you said I was leading this one, so I felt like I needed to be a little bit more engaged.
If there's ever a game show that says who directed that movie, Aiden would win hands down. Yeah.
Have Aiden on your team.
No fear.
He's the guy you want for Trivial Pursuit.
That's
if
right.
It's movie night.
That's right. Absolutely.
That's it. Him and Chip.
That's right.
Yeah. When it comes to that.
Okay, let's put together a team, and it'll be 4, because sometimes you get 4 on a team, right? Yeah. And you and I can just be on the team and just win.
Yeah, well, I think it's Aiden and Chip is what I want.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's you and me and Aiden and Chip.
Oh, and then we need to go to a bar to win.
Yeah, we just hang out. And we walk away with the prize. We don't even have to participate.
There you go. We can just add our little bit of knowledge when it comes around to the office or What About Bob.
Well, you bring your winning power because that goes with you everywhere that you go.
It does. I do win a lot.
And I'll just make everybody have a good time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't seen What About Bob, Bill Murray is a guy named Bob, and he is chronically mentally ill with a whole bunch of ailments.
He's kind of a hypochondriac.
Yes. He's a lot of things. And then you have Dreyfuss, who's playing Dr. Leo.
Yep.
And the whole movie is around this, what people I think about when it comes to counseling. Mm-hmm. And so what was one of your favorite scenes when you watched it?
I mean, the thing that when I think back, I always just think about his first advice is baby steps,
right.
And so he
hands him a book, which is the worst counseling thing ever, right? Here's a book.
He's like a book that he had written because he's trying to push it. And because, again, that's a stigma about counselors, right, is they're always just trying to push their own fame or whatever. And but it's called Baby Steps, so he reads it, and so he just starts saying baby steps to everything, right? Baby steps to the fridge, baby steps to the elevator. And I actually think about that sometimes in my own life. Like when I'm having a hard time doing something, I just think, it's okay. Baby steps. It's actually a good advice. I don't need a book on it, but it's super helpful.
What's in that book?
And just him. So again, just the premise of the movie is that the counselor ends up going on vacation with his family, and Bob ends up finding them. Excellent, because he thinks, man, I need help. I can't believe you're leaving me. And so he invades the family vacation. And so I think about, just the scene with him, in the water, off the dock. Yeah. Doesn't he jump into the water, and can he not swim, or his son can't swim or something?
Which one is it?
I can't remember.
I know the scene you're talking about.
But I see it in my head. I need to go back and watch the movie again. I asked Christiana if she wanted to watch it, and I think that she said that she can't stand it. And so I was like, well, okay, we won't watch it then.
Yeah, that's my wife with Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I love the movie, but she won't watch it with me.
Yeah. So you just have to wait till she's at work and you watch it on your own. We did actually just introduce our kids to Groundhog Day with Bill Murray. They thought that was really funny.
Really good one.
Oh, and I was telling you too, if you haven't seen it yet, so Bill Murray plays in PGA celebrity tour stuff, and he did this thing. It was like a no look putt where he was super casual
and
just drained it. Yeah, it was really good. So go check that out if you haven't seen that yet. But Bill Murray is still comedically doing
Still
his
funny,
thing.
still alive.
Still alive.
And
doing
still
his
funny.
thing. Yep.
Still
So
funny.
anyway, what sticks out to you? What was
Yeah,
your favorite?
in the movie, I think that the like three things that stick out, and we watched it beforehand, is when Bob comes to Dr. Leo's office for the first time, and he's staring at the picture of his family, and he just starts naming off names.
Yeah.
And
He's trying to guess the names of the family.
Yeah. Like that part is pretty awesome. And then just the classic line in that where he's like, "Well, what brought you in here today?" And Bob's like, "I have problems." And it's like that is like the best line ever.
Yeah. Well, and
in
then
this space.
he goes into, what we typically think counselors will do is they just repeat what you say in a question, right? And he says, "What kind of problem? Why do you think you have
Tell me
problems?
about
Tell me
problems."
about problems." That's right. That's what he says. Tell me about problems.
Would you like to talk about marriage?
Yeah, that's right.
So in that, and then
So
the other classic scene is when Dr. Leo's choking on something in the living room, and Bob starts like jumping on, you putting the knee, like he's jumping way up in the air,
That's
and
right.
like crushing Dr. Leo. And then the end of the movie where the family falls in love with Bob and turns on their dad, and Dr. Leo realizes where he's gone astray. And
Well, it's kind of fun. I mean, because you have this counselor that's supposed to have it all together, right? And through the course of the movie, you recognize he doesn't actually have it all together, And so we put on these facades to show, hey, we're good, we got this. And then
in the end, we're
really
human.
don't. We're human. That's
Just
right.
none of us are really experts. We're just all trying to figure it out.
Yep, absolutely.
So, hey, my name is Matt Manning, and I am the senior pastor here at Crossroads Church. And hopefully, you are loving what you're listening to today. If you are, we would love for you to go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. You can leave us a comment. We read all of them. And if you like it, we'd love for you to share this with a friend. Every week, we get together as a church to celebrate what God is doing, and you can join us every Sunday at 8:30, 10, and 11:30 online or in-house. Let's get back to the podcast. Yeah, so that's a classic movie, which really kind of just brings us into some of the discussion that we wanted to have today around counseling. And both you and I, being pastors, we do some pastoral counseling. We've had the opportunity to reference people, to see counselors, and yet still
we even
today
have a counseling center.
we have a counseling center, with 6 counselors in it. That was
Professionals
started.
that are not pastors.
Yes,
Yeah.
therapists.
Yes, there you go.
And it's been around for close to 20 years now, the counseling center, and helped a lot of people. But when it comes to counseling, still in like 2022, there's like a stigma around counseling. And I just wanted to talk about that a bit, particularly when it comes to men in counseling. And have you seen that? What's been your experience in terms of your own leading of people or recommending counseling to people and the stigmas that you see?
Yeah, I think a lot of times with men, there's this idea of weakness, or I think it's a mix between feeling like you're weak, like you can't handle it, like I can't handle this on my own. There's a sense of not wanting to be vulnerable in your emotions or in what you're thinking or what you're feeling. I think there's a sense of danger too. Like if I'm honest about what I'm really thinking or feeling, I'm gonna get like no one's gonna want to be around me.
Yeah.
I always talk about
So good.
the big ugly, right? Like we all have this thing inside of us that we're desperately that we don't want anybody to see, that is just it's the worst of us. And we're trying desperately to keep that thing hidden. And we're afraid of, man, if I go to counseling, they're going to start prying that open. And then my wife's going to know how terrible of a person I am. God's going to know how terrible of a person I am. I'm not going to have any friends anymore. And it's just going to drive me more into misery than actually helping me. It's like opening that wound that you've covered with a Band-Aid.
Yeah, that's so good. I often think of that in terms of like Genesis chapter 3, where the fall comes into the world, and all of a sudden, like intimacy with one another is totally dinged. It's totally broken. And the thing that we want most in this life is to be fully loved, which means we have to be fully known, and there's no fear of rejection. And yet, as we live lives, like we all have our closets, and they don't just have skeletons, like there's like full bodies, right, in our closets. And we think if anybody ever saw that closet, they would reject me. And so therefore I'm not going to be fully known, and I'm just going to walk through this life like not being fully loved. And then like we look at our lives and the direction and the purposeness of it in that space and what we yearn for most and what we're not able to open that door. And you're so right. Like when it comes to counseling, all of that fear is put on it.
And it's easier just to say, no, I'm good, I don't need it, or not wanting to reach out and help. And I think as a pastor, a lot of times people will come to me already they've crossed that border,
Yeah.
you know, of you know, hey, can you help me? And it's been
Or
more,
they're so desperate.
yeah, it's been more of a case of me saying, hey, I don't know that I actually have the skills to help you, but let me help guide you to a place that I think can help you. Or we'll have a few sessions or whatever, and it's kind of beyond, or maybe I do help, you know, for some of those things. So, but I know that that's definitely a stigma that was true for me in my own life. So after our twins were born, like babies mess up women's bodies anyway, but then twins really hit Christiana really hard. And so she went through a good season of postpartum depression, right? And we got to a place where I was actually talking to another pastor friend of mine where I'm like, I don't know what to do. And so he recommended a counseling session. I'm like, that's great. Yeah. And so call her up, get her a session. And all of a sudden they call back and they're like, yeah, that's great. We can get you in, but actually we want to get you both in. And I'm like, whoa, hold on a second.
Yeah. So what were your feelings like in that, right? Because did you have like the picture of Dr. Leo and what about Bob?
I didn't think about what about Bob. I just thought, I'm good. And so I went to the first session thinking, oh, they just want me to come to help support what's going on with her. And so I quickly realized that there are actually things that I needed to deal with that I didn't even recognize I needed to deal with. And really grateful. It was Inside Out Christian Counseling, and they offered free counseling to pastors. And so it was a really ended up being a good thing, not only for me, but for our marriage. Like, it literally saved our marriage because my temperament is naturally submissive and Christiana's is naturally controlling. And so for the first half of our marriage, it was easier for me to not rock the boat and just submit to whatever feeling she was having. And what ended up happening is, from her perspective, she received that as, I don't care. I wasn't giving proper boundaries as the leader of the household. I wasn't leading her in the way that she wanted to be, even though she bucks kind of that authority. She was looking for it from me, and I wasn't providing it. And so it really helped me learn that weakness of mine and give me the skills I needed to then step into that leadership. And I still have seasons where it's easier for me just to recluse, and Christiana will call me on it, like, you're not stepping up and being the leader that I need you to be. And I recall all the stuff that we had to go through in those counseling sessions, and I'm able to, pull my pants up and put on my big boy pants and actually, be the man that she needs me to be. And it helped her as well learn about her need to be submissive, and kind of help us flip those roles in our house in order for us to be the complementary couple that God designed us to be.
So if you remember, as you're thinking back to your place, so you're going with your wife to be supportive in this counseling session, right? You're sitting down, and when did the switch flip for you, and going, oh man, this is not just me supporting my wife. This is actually also for me. Like what was that moment for you, and what were some of the feelings, if you remember?
So we had to take an assessment. I've done tons of assessments in my life, through college and through Enneagram and all of the different things that are out there. And this particular one, it splits you into 3 different categories. So it's inclusion, your need for inclusion, control, and intimacy, basically, are the 3 different ones. And they pegged me so well. So as we're having these conversations, I'm talking about Christiana and the different things, and all of a sudden the counselor says something to me along the lines of, so it sounds to me, I think it was actually something, probably an attachment with my mom, actually.
Always goes back to mom and dad problems, doesn't it?
It does, and it sounds like you have an unhealthy attachment with your mom. I'm like, what do you mean I haven't? I'm like, hold on a second, So
I'm just here to support her.
That's right. When the counselor started turning and asking questions to me, but then was actually revealing truth in my life, that was the twist where it was this epiphany moment where, oh my goodness, I'm not as healthy as I thought that I was. And so it was scary, but also exciting to me. That my way to support her was actually not to have counselor fix her, but the way to support her was actually me focusing on myself and becoming more self-aware and allowing Jesus to come in and create that wholeness in me so that I could actually be the support that she needed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Now, in that counseling space, was it always couple, or did you have one-on-one sessions?
No, we started as couples, and then eventually we split to one-on-one, and then it was kind of at the counselor's discretion to say, hey, I think it's time for you guys to come and have conversations with each other again. And so it kind of played back and forth based on the needs of where we were. And Christiana was, coming out of that depressive state. And so she had to do, they did some really cool things there. Like they had a prayer ministry that they would do where and I did some of it as well, where you would sit and it was like they would help you meditate on the Spirit and allow the Holy Spirit to speak into your life about memories that you had forgotten. And so that was actually really hard on Christiana because of her background, and she had a lot of abuse in her past and things like that to bring those things back up. But you had to bring them up in order to deal with them. And she actually had a stigma about counseling too, because in high school when she went after her abuse, she had to go to a counselor, and basically she was like, hey, those things are going to be hard for you to deal with. Let's just put them in a box and we'll put them on a shelf and forget about them. And so the counseling she did in Iowa was, it's time to take those things off the shelf, open them up, and actually allow God to heal them. And so that was a really hard process for her to go through. But it was also very revealing and healing. And for me too, to kind of go back, I actually very recently had an incident where I blew up, anger. Like anger is a thing that I'm not easy to anger, but when it happens, I don't do it well. And I'm like, how come every time I actually get angry, I end up hurting people? And so I wrote her. She's still a good friend of ours. And so I wrote and I said, hey, I need a session. Can we do a Zoom session? Because I'm having issues. And I said, how do I get angry without hurting people? And it was really funny. She when we started having our session, she said, can I use that? She said, because that's like the most common epiphany for your temperament. And so there's the four common, there's melancholy, there's choleric, there is sanguine, and
starts with P.
Phlegmatic. And so this counseling center, there's a Arno is a couple. Their last name is Arno, and they determined that there's a fifth temperament type, which is supine. And supine is like a masked sanguine, is how they describe it. And out of the three areas that I did, I was supine in two of them. And so I was supine, sanguine. And so she was like, she's like, can I quote you on that forever? And I'm like, yes, please.
25 cents.
That's right. Every time you put it in a jar and just send it to me when it reaches $100. But she really started helping me work through, how do I handle my anger in a healthy way so that it doesn't build to this point of eruption? And I'm like, I still don't have it figured out. I blew up at my kid literally last night. Or was it last night or 2 nights ago, where we were praying and they started laughing in the middle of me praying.
Because that's not allowed.
And it ticked me off. Well, because it wasn't that they were being they were like, it felt disrespectful. And as soon as we were done.
Nothing sets a dad off faster than disrespect.
That's right. As soon as we were done, apparently Christiana started tickling his leg and messing with him, and he started laughing. Well, because I was like, it's not okay, it's disrespectful to me, the prayer, and I feel like it's disrespectful to God who we're praying to. And then all of a sudden he starts laughing, and I blew up, and I grabbed him and I moved him over. I'm like, you go to bed, and I don't want to see your face for the and Christiana's like, what is wrong with you?
You can go to bed too.
That's right. She was like, I was messing with him, and you're going nuts, you know? And so I turned into the monster. And it's really, we do giant leadership here at Crossroads. And that temperament says that my, what is it?
Your voice?
No, not my voice.
Your weapon system.
My weapon system, they call it the Hulk.
Yes.
My weapon system is the Hulk. And so I turned into the Hulk in that moment. And the Hulk is like angry without, you know, I no longer can care about what you think or what you feel. I just know that I'm mad, and all I'm doing is reacting.
Yeah.
And it's very unhealthy, right? And so I don't want to be that. I want to be able to be mad and to be able to speak how I'm thinking and how I'm feeling without it turning into I no longer care about you.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously counseling has been really helpful for you in your life. I've had counseling in my life. We both counsel people in terms of our ministry and our profession. If you were listening to this podcast today and you were on the fence about needing help, you saw an area in your life, but you were on the fence about whether counseling would help, what would you tell that you?
I would tell me it's worth it, and that the cost is worth it. The cost of being vulnerable, and also the financial cost of what it takes to be able to see a professional. But I would also caution you to go to a person that's going to come at it from a spiritual perspective, that can give you not only real science advice, but also good biblical, solid Christian advice.
Absolutely.
I know that there's counselors out there that they might tell you to put things in a box and not deal with it. And I don't think that that's actually a healthy way to approach it. And so making sure that it's a reliable source. And so, I mean, I trust our Crossroads counselors. I think that they do a really good job. And if you are unsure, go talk to a pastor. And a pastor who you trust is going to be able to give you the guidance to say, hey, yeah, we can walk through this. This is a spiritual problem. Let's do this together. Or they can give you trust their wisdom to say, hey, I think that you're going to need to go a little bit deeper in this, and trust their, not everyone is in Colorado probably that's listening to this and can't go to our center. So go to a pastor that you trust, and then ask them for the resources to find a good Christian resource that can help you work through those things. And what I've discovered is everybody can use counseling. You don't have to be a drug addict or a complete mess. We can all use outside help. I used to work for a company called Prep, and they teach couples and individuals healthy relationships and healthy communication. And the reality that I learned through that job is we all think that we're great communicators, and that it's everyone else around us that sucks. Right. And what counseling helps you realize is, I actually think that I'm a good communicator, but I actually don't have the skills to be a good communicator.
Absolutely.
And so to go to a counselor, they're going to provide you with the skills that you need to be a better person, and to be able to love the people around you and support the people around you in a way that is actually beneficial.
Well, if you are in the Colorado, North Metro Denver area, the way that you can find Crossroads Counseling Center is by simply going to Crossroads Counseling Associates, and that Google search will bring you to our counseling center. So, Jared, thanks for your vulnerability today.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Sorry, I talked a little bit.
Hey, that's what we wanted, is to hear your experience in counseling and to kind of melt away some of the stigma around counseling and Dr. Leo.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man.
Cool.
Take care.
Yeah, sounds good.